host of the Gridiron.
Now, if Stafford gets signed, 5 Giants who won't be back if Stafford gets signed. Now, some of this is going to be, you got to figure he's going to be, going to have to do with some money. Because the thing is, you figure, right, is that if we were to just say we drafted Cam Ward, number 3 overall, if he's there, we drafted him number 3, right? You got to figure, he's on the rookie deal now. Of course, the pick number 3, I think, is around like $8 million this season. So, you're talking nice little chunk of change there, right? But and of course, you have his 5th-year option. You can pick that up as well too. But $8 million compared to like $50 million, that's a big difference. Now, if the Giants were to bring in Stafford, right, he's going to want 45. Oh, he's seeing stories that he's going to want at least $50 million a year. Okay, so whether you can get him at 45 or 50 or whatever it is, we'll have to wait and see. But of course, if they sign him to 3 years, right, 3 years, whatever, $150 million, $100 million guaranteed, right, whatever. You make it where you can get out after like 2 seasons, right? But you give him a sign-in bonus, you break the sign-in bonus up into 3 years, right? So this year, his salary cap cap hit this year, instead of being 50, maybe it's only 40, right? Next year it'd be $50 million, or in 2 years it'd be $50 million. The last season his cap hit would be 60. But then again, of course, the cap's going up, so it's not that bad, right? But I mean, if the Giants are trying to, bring in somebody like Stafford, obviously they're going to want to try to, jettison some players that'll save themselves some money, right? So, all right. So, 5 New York Giants who won't be back if Matthew Stafford trade pulls true. A Stafford trade would undoubtedly lead to a lot of Giant roster turnover. See, now this is because this is one of the things, right? This is as I've said before, the thing I just can't stand the Eagles. Absolutely can't stand the Eagles. But see, the thing is, where this would cause a lot of turnover for the Giants, right? It wouldn't necessarily for the Eagles, because the Eagles sign a guy, right? What do you want? Okay, yeah, $50 million, sure, whatever, right? They put a bunch of void years on the end of his contract, so a lot of the money they owe him, or it all gets pushed down the road, right? So if the Eagles signed Matthew Stafford to a 3-year deal, it would really be like a 7-year deal. 3-year contract, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 void years on the end of his contract. So they push all this money down the road. So that's why they can afford a Matthew Stafford, pay him $50 million a year, but he only goes like $15 million toward the salary cap, because all the money is all pushed down the road, right? Giants don't do that, right? So the Giants, if they were to sign him for 3 years, guarantee him $100 million, after 3 years, that $100 million, if they let him go after 2 or whatever, something like that, right? The contract, the money is all off the books in 3 years. It's not 800 years down the road like the Eagles do, right? We're not like that, right? So that's the only way the Eagles can win a Super Bowl. They have to bring in a bunch of guys that they can't afford and put a bunch of void years on the end of the contract so they can afford them on the team, because otherwise they couldn't afford them. But I said the Giants don't do that, right? So the Giants, would definitely, try to jettison some players, right? I mean, Graham Gano, right? Nacho, right? Save some money, maybe even Motor Singletary. But so the Rams are allowing Matthew Stafford to talk to other teams regarding a trade. While this does not mean that Stafford is for sure going to get dealt, it does open the door to a deal being made. One NFL team that has been linked heavily to Stafford, perhaps more than any other, has been the New York Giants, and it isn't hard to see why. Giants are in dire need of a quarterback after releasing Daniel Jones midway through the 2024 campaign. And with the team sitting at number 3 overall in the upcoming NFL draft, they don't control whether they can select one of the 2 best options on the center. If they don't draft a quarterback, a Stafford trade might be the next best option. He'd certainly give the Giants their best chance to win right now. Yes, he would. The Giants were able to pull off a Stafford trade. Several players who were part of their team in 2024 almost certainly won't be part of the 2025 team. It might finally be time for the Giants to let Darius Slayton go. Darius Slayton has spent all 6 of his NFL seasons with the Giants after the team selected him in the fifth round of the 2019 draft, and he's been a consistently solid weapon for New York. That alone is impressive, especially when most of his tenure was spent with Jones under center. Unfortunately, Slayton's numbers took a bit of a hit this past season, as he recorded 39 receptions, 573 yards, and 2 touchdowns in 16 games. It was pretty clear that New York's third option at the receiver position behind Nabers and Robinson. While he's fine in that role, the Giants could use a better number 2 option to pair alongside Nabers. Assuming the Giants get that, Robinson would be the number 3 option, and Slayton would be barely a factor, which is true. And if Slayton is barely a factor, you don't want to bring the guy back. I mean, I seen Spot Track or no PFF. PFF? I think it was PFF. Said, he might get from 10, 12, 13 million or so a season. So the Giants want to bring him back, right? With like 10, 12 a year or so and have him be like maybe on the sideline. Yeah. Right. At this point, it feels like this is a good opportunity for both sides to get a fresh start. And I'm sure Slayton feels the same way too. Especially if he can go to a contender where he can get some playing time, right? I'm sure he feels that way and make some money. Right? Tim Boyle's Giants tenure will be predictably short-lived. All the turmoil in New York's quarterback room led to the Giants eventually adding Tim Boyle late in the season. He appeared in one game for New York, completed 12 of 24 passes for 123 yards. Unfortunately, that kind of showing has been par for the course for Boyle at the NFL level, as he has completed just 60.5% of his passes over the course of his career and has nearly triple the amount of interceptions, 13 as passing touchdowns, 5. Giants could choose to bring Boyle back in the third quarterback role, but even then, they can almost certainly do better. Ojulari will receive more money than the Giants should be willing to pay him. Azeez Ojulari might not have ever lived up to the promise he showed in his rookie year, but he did not just put together his second-best NFL season in 2024. The 24-year-old recorded 6 sacks in just 11 games, played along with 7 tackles for loss and 10 quarterback hits. To put it simply, he was extremely productive when he was on the field. Ojulari's strong season will earn him quite a bit of interest on the open market. Well, so will his injury history, too. Giants should undoubtedly be one of those interested teams, but considering his age and the amount of promise he showed, he will likely get more money than the Giants can afford to spend, especially if they pay Stafford a substantial contract. Giants have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence entrenched on the defensive line. There aren't many strengths on this Giants roster, but up front is certainly one of them. Even without Ojulari, assuming he gets a hefty payday, the Giants will likely let him go. Giants have little reason to keep Devin Singletary around. Singletary will forever be known as the guy that the Giants chose to replace Saquon Barkley. What makes that distinction worse is that Singletary was only in control of the New York backfield for the first 4 weeks of the season before Tyrone Tracy took over. Tracy was one of the few Giant bright spots from this past season, as he rushed for 839 yards on 192 attempts with 5 touchdowns. He averaged 4.4 yards a carry, which is exceptionally impressive considering the lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball and the 10 different starting offensive line units they had too. And the thing is that the first so many games of the season, first 4 games, 5, whatever it was, the Giants pretty much the same starting unit in there, and they did pretty well. The wheels started falling off right around like game 5, game 6 when guys started getting injured. So we had the 10 different starting, so we had the first few weeks, we had like the 9 different starting offensive line units in like the last 10, 11 so weeks. It's almost like every other week there was a different starting unit in there as well. Doesn't help much with the pass protection doesn't help a whole heck of a lot either when it comes to running the football there. So got 4.4 yards a carry when he was the starter with every other week, every week, the new starting lineup in there on the offensive line. So I ain't saying the guy's Barry Sanders or nothing, but pick the dude up in the 5th round. That's pretty impressive. I'm pretty impressed with that. All right. Tracy, especially as the Giants running back of the present and future, New York could elect to keep Singletary around at a fairly reasonable $6 million cap hit. But they can probably receive a draft pick by trading him. He isn't a necessity to keep around as a backup, and trading him allows the Giants to save some money and potentially add more much-needed draft capital. Drew Lock won't be back regardless of what happens with Matthew Stafford. This isn't as bad as Singletary, but Lock will forever be remembered by Giants fans as the guy who ruined New York's chances at earning the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Lock had one of the best games the Giants quarterback has had in recent memory in Week 17 against the Colts, leading New York to a victory, and all but eliminating any chance the team had of earning the top pick in the draft. While Lock was obviously impressive that week, his numbers otherwise were quite underwhelming. The 28-year-old appeared in 8 games and started 5, with the Giants going just 1-4 in those starts. He completed 59.1% of his passes for 1,071 yards, 6 touchdowns compared to 5 interceptions overall. So there's no reason for the Giants to bring Lock back regardless of his role. They can get a younger option in the draft or a better option in free agency. Whether Stafford comes or not, the Lock era should come to an end. So, I mean, the thing is, like, if you bring in Stafford, I mean, without question, there's going to be, quite possibly, just the fact just to save some money. I mean, because as I said, if we're bringing in Sanders or Ward at pick number 3, that's like an $8 million cap hit. $8 million, $8 million, $8 million, $8 million. For the next 4 years, $8 million a year, right? I mean, that's something the Giants can live with, right? You bring in a Stafford, I mean, they can live with that too, but they're going to have to start jettisoning some players. Maybe reduce some salary cap. Some of the guys, some of like Brian Burns or John Runyon Jr., some of the guys, their salaries have to be dual a little bit to free up some extra money. So we'll have to wait and see.